and challenge that three-point shot.
4.8 to go. Robbins has it. Here comes Mignon with a path. Outside to Lawrence for the win. Yes! He got it! He got it! Vanderbilt wins it!
What a game. Absolute resilience from the Commodores and calm under pressure from Tyron Lawrence to nail the shot from the corner. An upset win in that fashion over a top 10 ranked opponent calls for a special edition of VU Sports Wired, Vanderbilt Video Productions' premier sports talk show. My name is Bobby Kent, a Vanderbilt Hustler senior staff writer, and I am your host. I am joined by Jonah Barbin, Hustler sports copy editor. What a week it has been for Vanderbilt men's basketball. 2 games ago, Vanderbilt loses by 57 to Alabama, then responds by beating Ole Miss and topped it off with the stunning defeat of Tennessee just last night at Memorial. Jonah, you and I were both at this game. How did Vanderbilt win this one?
Yeah, Bobby, well, coming into this game, Stackhouse said that this was the quintessential game of his career to this point. If he was ever to prove something as Vanderbilt's head coach, and there's been a lot of questions about whether he should be Vanderbilt's head coach in the last week, right, it would be this game. And a lot of the things that we talked about on VU Sports Wired a couple of days ago really came into play. We talked about defensive discipline. That was the number one thing that I noticed in the Ole Miss game, and it carried over so well to this game that when Vanderbilt was down by 2 and had to foul because the shot clock was dead, right? The shot clock was off. They couldn't get Tennessee to the free throw line. They had 5 fouls to give. I don't think I've ever seen a team have 5 fouls to give with only 1 minute remaining in the game, right? And so you think in that span, and it did happen, something's bound to go wrong in the inbounding, and eventually Vanderbilt will get the ball back. And they did. So that's what defensive discipline gets you, right? So that's the first thing I looked at. The other thing was, can Liam Robbins continue to be good and even a little bit better? Can he shoot a little bit better from the field? Can he be that presence both offensively and defensively? And yes, he could. And one of the final keys was Stackhouse said in his post-game press conference after Ole Miss that he holds Tyron Lawrence to a higher bar than a lot of guys on this team because he believes Lawrence can be successful at the next level. He's continued to show that confidence. Lawrence played another really strong game throughout. He had a wild dunk that might get lost now after that crazy buzzer beater, but in the beginning of the first half, he had an insane dunk. I hope SportsCenter remembers about that. And then at the end, trusting him to bounce out to the weak side, Ezra Mignon had been driving well to the hoop all game, right? All game. It sets up. When you watch a game in its entirety, you see how things are set up. Because Mignon was getting to the hoop at will, you knew that if he drove in, Tennessee was going to crash. To trust Tyron Lawrence on the outside, on the weak side, to take that shot, 0.2 seconds to go, he gets it off. Stackhouse really won big, and he was happy about it last night. He deserves to be, Bobby.
No, 100%. I mean, that was almost the perfect play call in that final moment there. I thought, watching from the student section, that I was like, wait a minute, I don't know if they're going to get this off, right? Inbound to Robbins, and then the play to Mignon, but his speed is what really made up that time there. And then, I mean, I don't think enough people are talking about this, but that pass was incredible body control to be able to get that over to Tyron Lawrence to make that shot, right? So that was just an incredible sequence there for Vanderbilt. And then the whole place was just pandemonium once he made it. I mean, students started rushing the court. Vanderbilt's going to get fined, but I think they're going to take that 100%, 100 times out of 100, and you beat the rivals like that, they'll take that fine. But just an overall great effort from the Commodores. I mean, Liam Robbins, I thought, played really well in this one too, especially having 2 fouls in the first half and then only getting another foul. I mean, there was a lot of trust in him by Coach Stackhouse to not, take him out of the game in those final minutes. And he really repaid that faith. I mean, he forced the issue all night. He was aggressive, especially late when he realized, you know what, I got to take over this game. He had that ability in him and he did it. I mean, huge performances overall. Jordan Wright came alive in the second half, I thought, after sort of being, not really there in the first half. I mean, Tyron Lawrence had a really strong game. His offensive game has really, really grown across this entire season for Vanderbilt, which is just huge. And another thing we talked about too is Tennessee has 4 players that average 10 plus. And while Tennessee had 4 players in this game that got 10 plus, they limited Ziegler to only 5 points. Phillips had 10. and then Vescovi had 14. So none of those guys scored over 20. None of those guys had a huge game that absolutely knocked Vanderbilt out of it. And Vanderbilt played a really scrappy first half. They were had Tennessee match their style a little bit. They were only down by 2 at the half. And then Vanderbilt made the plays they needed to make in the second half. I do want to say to you though, Jonah, did that surprise you that in that final minute there, that when Joshua Jordan James got the ball and then did not go the dunk there to put them up forward and it would have sealed it?
That was insane, Bobby. I don't know what he was possibly thinking. I saw head coach Rick Barnes. I saw his head explode. I literally saw it explode on the sideline. And I was thinking, I was in the press box, right, covering the game. I was folding up my computer to go down to the losing post-game press conference of the Commodores. You thought, oh, he got free. That's it, right? Because when you're up by 2, right, and you inbound the ball, sure, you just want to get away from the defenders to drain as much time as possible. But that's with the assumption that you're not right under the hoop. If you're right under the hoop, make it 4. I understand if you're up 4, just trying to dribble it out and waste as much time as possible. You're already up by over a score, right? It's a 2-score game. But up by 2, how do you not finish that off? And then you put pressure, you go to the free throw line, you miss the free throw, things unravel. And then when you're only up 2, you have a chance to lose on a buzzer beater 3. And that's exactly what happened. So a really rough last minute for Josiah Jordan James, who after that then sustained an injury as well. So I'm sure Rick Barnes is going to address all that. And obviously he seemed very upset, as I would too. It's things like that that really, make this a tough pill to swallow for Tennessee. They'll be able to move forward, believe me. A few of my other takeaways. I want to second what you said about Jordan Wright. Jordan Wright was really supposed to be the guy this year, I think, coming into this year, the way he played in the NIT and kind of maybe that second fiddle he played to Scottie Pippen Jr. last year. You thought he was really going to step up and this was going to be his team. Hasn't quite worked out that way. Some injuries have also gotten in the way, but I really like the way he played in the second half. A real gritty performance. And he was in the post-game press conference too and said, this is the game I really wanted. I've always wanted to beat Tennessee. I was 0-7 against them in my lifetime before playing them. The fact that he knows that, that's on his mind, that shows you how much Jordan Wright cares. And that shows you that he's a quintessential leader on that team. So really shout out to him in this win. It's big too. Something I'm looking going forward, Bobby, because you have to think about now what's exciting is March is not out of sight. You're 12-12. You have two big quad one wins now to point to, right? And then you have a couple more winnable SEC games coming up before you have to play, Kentucky again, right? So what I'm thinking is what is working for this team right now and what's not working. We've been talking a lot about what's working. So these things need to continue. Something I'm a little concerned about, wanted to get your thoughts on about it, is Miles Stute. He's taking a lot of threes and not making a lot of them. Again, he'll have those games where he has 7 threes in a game. So you feel really good about what you're putting together with Stute behind the arc. But I feel like they're going to need him down the stretch offensively, right? Every game can't be this close. So what kind of adjustments do you think the Commodores need to make going forward?
I think you're 100% right. He needs to get right. He needs to start, being that dependent 3-point shooter that, he was last year and was to start this year. When you don't have him at his best, you're relying on a lot of minutes for Trey Thomas, and Trey Thomas is playing, plays well when he's in there, right? But he's not, that big defensively. So he's a little bit of a liability defensively. And, when he doesn't, he adds you value in 3-pointers as well, and he makes some clutch shots of his own. Trey Thomas is, too, in his own estimate, is a good player. But Miles Stute, when he's not on, I think it disrupts the offense. It's a little bit of Stackhouse has to play a little bit differently with lineups. I would love to see him really get right, because if he can be in there, that lineup with Robbins, with Lawrence, with Wright, that 5 is a really efficient lineup. So Stute needs to be able to get right. I think he will. It's funny because, like you mentioned, he can make 7, and then he can also have games where he just misses off the right iron, or, it doesn't even make contact with the rim. So I think he'll get right. I think he'll understand the importance of getting right soon enough. But he's going to be a big, big factor for Vanderbilt if they want to make a push toward March. Definitely.
Yeah. No, I completely agree with that too. And with that in mind, these next 4 SEC games are the biggest of Stackhouse's career, right? You saw in the press conference last night, he was so relieved, so happy. He was, calling out the people who doubted him, essentially, rewarding the people who have had faith in him. Stackhouse hears the noise, believe me. And one of the quotes he said is, we love to jump from skyscraper to skyscraper, right? We love to be on top of life all the time. Unfortunately, that's not how existence is designed. There are peaks and valleys. There are ebbs and flows. And he finished off the quote by saying, we've ebbed a lot, so now it's hopefully time to flow a little bit. And I think that is the sentiment around the Commodores, right? What's a point that Stackhouse has been making a lot is that the new frame of college basketball is so different, right? All this NIL money, right? All this incentive to play at X school or Y school, right? And Vanderbilt may be a little behind the curve on the NIL stuff. So we have a lot of guys that are here because they want to be here, because they believe in this program, because they believe in the things that Stackhouse is preaching, not because of anything else, which is really special in a way. We have a lot of guys who have bought into this program who are really talented players and can hang with the best in the SEC. We saw it last night, right? Case in point. We saw it against number 15 Arkansas. They can hang around with really good talent. So now the question is, in this final stretch, is not do we have the guys, but do we have the discipline and do we have that kind of clutch gene that we saw last night to push forward and really make Selection Sunday an interesting one for the Commodores?
Definitely. And hopefully Vanderbilt can keep those flows going right in the next few games. So thank you so much for that. I'll probably do it for this episode of our special edition of VU Sports Wire. Thank you for listening. We'll be back next week talking more basketball, hopefully more good news, and also our baseball preview. See you then.